side. You have to add another detector on the opposite side. Because what happens is the smoke actually travels up, banks over, and kind of stays in that area. So if you end up having an issue over here and don't put that in there, what's going to happen is this area is going to be not covered. You can't cover it with that detector because it's going to stay here until it gets so overwhelmed that it's going to start bleeding through, and by that time it's too late, right? You want to get early detection on that stuff.
Is that 15% a typo? Should that be 15 inches or?
Percent. They always use percent because you're.
15% of the ceiling height.
That's correct. 15% of where else do they use that? The percentage thing. Area spacing coverage, right?
Yeah.
Right? Area spacing coverage. Because not only there for this wall, because they do that in 13. How many of you do 13 stuff? Sprinklers. Everybody do sprinklers? Because they do the same thing, a percentage, right? A percentage of the wall height or a percentage of the, you know, they have their little formula thing there. That's what they're looking at. Okay, because most of the times if you say inches, it may not apply. Just because what's happening is you're trying to limit that size of this wall. That's the maximum. Okay? What you're doing is you're trying to create an area that, well, a definition that's going to fit almost anything. Because if you do a percent, because if you do inches and you go, wow, that wall is like 30 feet tall, you know, and you only got 15 inches, you might as well go that rest of the 15 inches with a drywall, right?
Yeah.
But if you have another one that's smaller, right? So you got, let's say, what is the ceiling height? 8 feet, right? 8 feet mostly? 8, 9 feet. The number's going to be different, right? For that gap. So they're just trying to do a better definition, and they probably have some fire modeling that goes along with that, smoke modeling that shows how that works. All right? Let's see. Smooth ceiling. Smooth ceiling is great. If they ever have smooth ceiling, that's fantastic because you can lay it out pretty much on a two-dimensional plane. When they start doing non-smooth ceiling type coverage, you need to have that profile view because you don't know what it looks like. You don't know. They got to give you the depth because all this stuff is based on greater than or less than.
Right.
Okay, so you have to know what that difference is, what that difference in the ceiling soffit or whatever the case may be as far as the beams, to see if you need to actually put coverage in the pockets or if you can do smooth ceiling and just put them every so often and have regular coverage. Okay, if they do beam pockets, that's always a pain. Why? Because every single one, normally if they're too deep, got to have detection in there. And you just got this, you know, you probably have 3 times the amount of coverage than you would for a smooth ceiling. So just be paying attention to the tables and how that works, and you have to describe it in the plan. If it just shows a bunch of detectors laid out all over the place and they don't say smooth ceiling, you need to verify. Because as soon as the inspector goes out there, especially if you just do plan reviews and you give it to him, and he goes out there and goes, what the heck, they put in all these beams, you know, and then he's out of luck. So it's easy to avoid that, make a phone call, go, hey, is this smooth ceiling? Yeah, per such and such engineer or architect or whatever, smooth ceiling coverage, okay? All right. I thought it was all automatic. In essence, you're looking at small particles is what those things sense as far as smoke detectors. There's different types of smoke detectors. So you have the ionization, photoelectric. I know there's different frames of thought as far as which ones are better for which types of fire and all that good stuff. But for the most part, they use them interchangeably. Projected beam detectors, I think I had a picture of that earlier. It's basically a device that projects a beam to the other side, and it has similar spacing requirements. You really need to look at the cut sheets to see how wide of a path that beam can detect, because it does have limits. You can't just run a beam down the center of a room and go, we're good. It has actually widths as far as how far that beam will cover before you have to put another beam detector up. Beam detectors. Why do we use those? Why not just put a bunch of smoke detectors?
High ceilings.
High ceilings, that could be the case.
Probably at the airport, I would imagine.
They don't want them on the ceilings. Maybe they have a glass ceiling, right?
Yeah.
You see atriums, they have glass ceilings. Hard to cover those things, sticking, you know, wiring and conduit and everything up there. That's one of the reasons.
Well, stages use them too, didn't
they don't necessarily need them, but it may be advantageous to them because what happens is in the back of the stage, they do a lot of rigging changes and all kinds of things, but if they put those up high, they don't have to get up in there to deal with that. It's just one device that they gotta deal with on one side, right? Plus, they can actually test it from down below if they put in one of those switches. Say, oh, is it working? Yeah, we can test it. We can actually test it down there. The other thing is they can cover large areas with just one device, right? You don't have to put 3, 4, 5 detectors in there. They do have their limits. They do have their quirks. If you put it in some place that has movement in the building, okay, I think I have a slide of this. Let's move on here, and I'll show you the slide here real quick. Other types of detection, you have duct smoke detectors, which we saw right there. We have some air sampling detectors. I kind of talked a little bit about it. Vesda and FAST are the two systems that are predominant in the market right now. I think, is it Vesda is, I forget who the manufacturer is, but Siemens, I believe, came up with the FAST system, and they work similarly. And that stuff is covered in NFPA 72. We'll talk a little bit about how the detection works for that in the presentation here. And video image smoke detectors. That's kind of unique. I've only seen one in the state, and that's at Sky Harbor. And in essence, it has a program that has an algorithm that mimics what smoke is supposed to look like.
Right.
So they're kind of fine-tuning it. They had it down at Terminal 4 at Sky Harbor, and one of the things that it does is it uses monitors or cameras to look at the space that they want to cover, and it says if it acts like the algorithm or the movement of smoke, then it's going to set off the alarm. The only problem is people with white t-shirts in crowds as they move kind of look like that, and they set it off a few times like that, and they had to fine-tune that program. It's in essence a program that tries to see what smoke is. Unfortunately, they haven't figured out all the bugs. Very expensive, but it's great if you have areas where you're putting up planes and constantly changing stuff as far as things hanging off the ceiling, because it's just looking at the area. You don't have to worry about moving stuff or running conduit or electrical wiring to the individual device. Okay, that's pretty new stuff. If you get a chance to look at one or see one installed and tested, please take advantage of it, because chances are you probably won't ever see it again. All right? Let's see. All right. Photoelectric detectors, they work by light obscuration. So what they're looking at is a percentage of light that's being